specifically, a lot of people are stretching necks, right? They spend time stretching lateral flexion, spend time stretching this, spend time stretching rotation, but what we need to do is be adding active work to it, right? And you can do pails and rails for the neck, but they generally are hard for people to execute. So what we're gonna do is the lowest barrier to entry for neck training. Eccentric loading, so like neck sit-ups in a sense. We're gonna talk about tissue engagement, right? We always talk about like the intentionality of your training when you're training a joint, anterior tissue, posterior tissue. How does this contribute to the movement, right? How does tissue engagement contribute to the articulation you're doing? So we're gonna have you face down first, head hanging off the table, and then you're gonna train neck extension to flexion, and then we're gonna flip you over and talk about flexion to extension, the opposite, okay? The same way you do sit-ups for the rest of your spine, we're gonna do neck sit-ups to load both positions. So a couple things that we're looking at when we do this, you'd scoot off a little bit further. For right now, you're only using the weight of your head, right? So the demand that we're like imposing on your neck isn't that significant unless your neck simply can't handle it, right? Like you couldn't do any more. So to start, we're looking to feel this stuff go to length. What I want you to do is start putting your head up and feel this tissue go to the shortened position as you look up towards the roof. So from here, you can extend from the thoracic spine a little bit. It depends on how low in your cervical spine you want to go. So when we're doing neck training, I try to get all my people to feel the correlation of tissue shortening with the segment that is extending. So think about like you're getting C1 right here, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. If you feel like you're going into T1, T2, that's fine, right? Like there's more to your neck than just the cervical. It's how it relates to the thoracic. So you feel all that tissue shortening. You have the option to hold this as an EQI, right? An eccentric quasi-asymmetric, where you're holding this tissue in the shortened position until you begin falling into an eccentric. We're starting with the weight of your head against gravity because that's where we're starting you off, right? We wouldn't add load. We're starting like as if you're deadlifting for the first time, you're doing just the bar, then you add additional load. Same thing with squats, same with bench. So the load you're using is just the weight of your head, you're fighting the resistance of gravity. Now bring your head down and feel this tissue go from the shortened position to the lengthened position. And I just want us to really reinforce that concept because when we add additional load, I need to make sure that you're getting the right tissue engagement. We're not task training anymore, we're tissue training it. So again, we're feeling this stuff go to somewhat length. You probably feel this more than this. We're gonna train this to length in a different setup. And then what I want you to do is begin extending. And you can start from C1. If you looked up all the way, think chin up as high as you can. C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. You feel all that tissue shortening. Again, we're looking for segmentation, right? So you can do like cervical segmentation here in a sense, but I need to make sure that just like when we do lumbar flexion, we feel each of the vertebrae contribute to flattening of the spine. Feel each of these vertebrae contributing to pulling your head up. And if I said go above my pen even more, like you're playing limbo, can you get a deeper shortening contraction there, right? And if you're getting like a pinch, then we need to open up that range limiting tissue, right? The closing side restriction. So are you getting a contraction or are you getting pinching?
Contraction.
Good, okay. Now come back down and give me another rep of flexion downward. And this is a very simple thing that someone could do on the edge of their bed, the edge of their sofa, the landing of their stairs, a bench in the gym, and they feel tissue going to length, and then they're gonna come back up and contract, and because of the way you're positioned here, you're not likely to extend from here too much. We're looking at upper thoracic and cervical. So go ahead and look up again, and then find that C1 contraction. And then as you bring your head up, can we segmentally extend the same way you would do like a Superman, right? A Superman on the ground for global extension if you were to keep peeling up, but we're biasing just the cervical spine. Another thing you can do, and we're not gonna load this because of the way the neck harness is designed, is you can add rotation to it. So now rotate over this way, and you should feel the tension transfer from the back of the neck to that corner. But now run away from my pen here too, head up more. You should feel a bias towards the left side as this area is shortening. If you were to rotate to me, but keep your head up, so imagine you're playing limbo with my pen here, I would want to see the tension kind of transfer to the opposing side of the neck. And if that's something you don't feel, then we need to train that neurology, right? The ability to contract that tissue. And if you feel one side getting stuck or pinching versus the other, then there's something to be said there, and we can talk about that. and then rotate the other direction. And again, all we're doing is learning to feel our neck, because better neurology allows you to self-assess, allows you to have more productive training, allows you to communicate with a trainer if someone watching the video is working with a trainer. And so now what you can do is stay here in this position. You see how you're rotated and extended? Keep yourself rotated this far and begin flexing downwards. So now you have that bias to that left corner, and now this tissue is going to length rather than it being short, right? So you're kind of doing like a rotated sit-up, so don't lose that rotation down here. Now this tissue is going to lengthen this corner. Now maintain that degree of rotation you're in and bring your head up and shorten this tissue, but segmentally. So think again, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6 when you get to your thoracic spine. You're welcome to keep going if you like how that feels. You can now rotate back to me. And again, keep in mind if you're overextending here, like if you're not getting that sensation in the back of the neck and you're getting it up here, then you're compensating at the thoracic spine. It's no different than any other spine drill. And now that you're rotated here, we have that shortened tissue on this upper right corner. We feel that contraction. And then again, kind of bobbing your head down, letting gravity pull your head, but you're resisting the load of your head. So you're doing an eccentric, right? We're working to length. And this is something that's a lot easier for someone to wrap their head around as opposed to pails and rails. Does that make sense in principle? Yeah. Rotation with extension. Let's have you flip over, have yourself face up. You're gonna do the same thing in reverse. The head's gonna hang off the table. One thing that's worth mentioning is a lot of clients I've had, especially my older folks, get dizzy doing this. There's a barrier to entry there. And if they get too dizzy, we would dose them however they can. So if they can do like 30-second intervals at a time, fine, right? If they can do a minute, fine. If they can't do it at all, then we have to make up a setup for them, seated. So again, the reverse, right? We're just trying to identify tissue engagement, make sure the neurology's there, an easy setup for someone to work with. You should now feel this anterior tissue lengthening. The throat down to the sternum, clavicular stuff where your collarbones are. Do you feel more open side or are you feeling more closing side on the back side of your neck?
I'd say closing.
Okay, can you take a big deep breath and think about doing more limbo and see if you can find any stretching on the front side? Or is it, let me rephrase, are you getting a closing side restriction or a contraction on the back side of your neck?
Restriction.
Restriction, okay. What I want you to do now is we're gonna do neck sit-ups to train the anterior tissue for now. If you keep getting closing side restriction, then you know that means we have to open up the backside first, right? And when we add additional load with the neck harness, that's gonna be what clears up your closing side restriction. So now think a neck sit-up. Think tuck the chin, and just like before, you wanna feel the association of anterior tissue with C1. Anterior tissue, double chin more, double chin. Think chin to sternum more. Down, 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 yes. So C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. As you get to the thoracic, keep the chin tucked even more. And now reverse, drive your chin down into your sternum and begin letting your head come back. And just feel this anterior tissue contracting that contributes to the neck sit-up, and that should help address the neurology restriction that we're feeling on the back side of your neck. So our job right now is to train anterior tissue as opposed to posterior tissue. You can see how that helped, right? You're able to find the front side of your neck, and that's why we're doing this before we add additional loads. It's important that you're warming up in some regard. You tuck the chin again, and again, as you tuck the chin and you do that like double chin sensation, feel C1 contracting, associating with the backside. You're tucking the chin further, you're going to C2, C3, and again, anterior spine tissue, the same way we feel the abdomen contract for lumbar flexion, can you feel the cervical anterior spine tissue contracting for cervical flexion? And now keep that chin tuck, and then head goes back, but maintain that contraction, because now you're eccentrically loading, right? So you're maintaining tension on the sternal tissue, on the front side of the throat. As your head's going, you're just fighting the resistance of gravity. And now let's say hypothetically, you have a client who has a really messed up neck, a lot of restriction, right? They don't have much endurance. We like doing just the negatives. So what I'm gonna do is help you up, and you're gonna tuck your chin hard. Tuck your chin, tuck your chin, tuck your chin, right there. Be able to find the contraction, the shorten. Now resist, do the negative. Yes, yes. And if you're on your own, you can grab your own head and pull yourself up, which I'm gonna have you do next. So go all the way to length. Once you find that length, grab your head, pull yourself back up, tuck the chin hard, feel the contraction, and now let go. And now maintain that contraction as you go to length. Remember, we do eccentrics because you're stronger in the negative and we can more effectively load tissue than on the concentric. So if a client doesn't have the load bearing capacity to do flexion of the neck, you can help them up, have them do a passive assist on the concentric, contract that anterior neck tissue, and then begin loading into the eccentric. Does that make sense in principle, how it compares to the extension version of it? They're just the opposites. And now what you can do again is rotate. Now you have an opening side on this left corner. And now you can do the same thing if I wanted to help you up and do a passive assist on the concentric if you want. You have the freedom to do the concentric too. Think ear to hear more. Get your ear, yes, that. Now you should feel this lateral neck tissue shortening. And then again, you're eccentrically loading. Resist the weight of your head. Maintain tension on the closing side of your neck as it goes from the shortened position to the lengthened position. Keep that head bobbed. Feel this tissue now going to length. And again, be mindful of any closing side restriction. We can talk about that separately. Rotate to me. Same difference. You feel open side stretch. I can help you on the assist if you need it. Get this ear to your sternum a little bit more. Try to shorten this lateral tissue. And now again, this is in the shortened position. And now resist the weight of your head as it goes to length. You're now training anterior tissue with some bias to lateral tissue. Kind of see what we're doing there?
Yeah.
All right, take a second, let's have you sit up. So we did extension to flexion, flexion to extension, right? Both ways, eccentric loading and EQIs. We're gonna do the last part being lateral flexion side to side. So I have one setup I tend to do for this. There's more you can do for it, but we're gonna get length on your lateral flexors and do neck sit-ups and eccentrics there. So let's have you lay on your side facing this way. This arm is gonna be off the table up here. I generally like to prescribe this arm being behind you relaxed. Same in principle. We're training to length and you're using the weight of gravity or the weight of your head in addition to the effect of gravity to get length on this lateral tissue. Okay, do we feel open side stretching as you do this? You feel more open side than closing side?
Yes.
Okay, so we're in a trainable position. You have some options here. I'm gonna go through all the options. So from in this position, you have the lengthened tissue. Now run away from my hand down here and begin taking this into the shortened position, and you're now contracting. It's no different than when you were sitting forward. I wanted you to contract this tissue, but now you're contracting lateral tissue. And now you have this tissue in the fully shortened position. Now slowly release your head back to the ground, and now this tissue is going to length. And the whole time I want this arm and trap totally disengaged, and only lateral neck stuff is contributing to the head coming up and down. So go ahead and try contracting this tissue again to pull yourself back up. You're now shortening all this lateral tissue. You feel that contraction in the shortened position, and then maintain that tension and begin going to length. And it's the same principle that we did when we did sit-ups from the front side, sit-ups from the back side. You're now just training the sides of your neck. Now I'm gonna help you again. You can do the same thing, a partner assisted or self-assist. You feel this tissue shortening. I'm gonna let go. You feel that tissue contracting. Now let your head kind of slowly bob back down. So just like with all other training, right, we can add layers of specificity, and it depends on the person, their training goals, and what their neck needs. I have you looking this way and doing lateral flexion up and down. I can also have you look up at the roof and now think about getting your ear to your trap. You should now feel a different line of tissue engaging.
Closing side pinching.
Is it pinching or contraction?
Pinching.
It's pinching, so you're getting pinching when you go up in that direction. Okay, go ahead and come back down. So now you have closing side restriction when you do this. In theory, you should try to open that line of tissue as part of your programming moving forward, right? Like we just uncovered, we have a data point that you get closing side restriction when you are laterally flexed and rotated like this. And then when you came back up, you were getting more closing side restriction rather than a contraction. That rotation does it for you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. Data points for you because this is the first time we've been training your neck. Go ahead and look down all the way at the floor. You can do the opposite now. Exactly, so now you have all this tissue to length, right? Same concept. And now look up at the roof from there. You kind of see how you're now shortening a different line of tissue. Closing side restriction or a healthy contraction.
Contraction.
So you see how the difference is there. So what you can do now is do an EQI here. You feel tension here, slowly start looking up at the roof. You see how we're oscillating and there's tension here? Tuck your chin to your collarbone more. Run away from my hand here. And now keep running away from my hands and then rotate down to the floor. Is that a pop in your neck?
My jaw.
Your jaw, okay. You good? You feel this tissue shortening?
No.
Now you found it?
Yeah.
Okay, now keep that head up like this and then think about running away from my pen and you're rotating this way, exactly. And all this tissue is short the whole time. You're fighting the resistance of gravity and the load of your head. Tuck this chin there. Yep, and then rotate back. Run away from me the whole time. Do you kind of see what we're doing there? Yeah. There's a lot of options. You're kind of doing the half neck car in this position against gravity. Now go ahead and relax your head. Do a neck car from this position, but don't let anything move here. Feel how the tissue's shortening as you bring the head up, as you look up. Now this tissue's going to length. Now this tissue's going to length. You drag the chin across your sternum. This tissue shortens. Tissue shortens through here, all the way around. And so now you're loading your neck against gravity, doing the neck car, exploring flexion, extension, rotation, lateral flexion, all the zones of it. You can do the reverse as well, clockwise and counterclockwise. And again, we're just stimulating that tissue as best you can in the shortened position, in the lengthened position, in the mid-range, in different contexts with different resistance profiles. So you have options with it. That's all I'm trying to get across. And how you apply those is based on you, your neck, your training program, what your neck needs. You mentioned you got pinching or closing side restriction when you did like some variation of lateral flexion and then the rotation, right? That's where you got restriction. So for you, you got a data point that that tissue needs to be lengthened so you have room to move into, right? You get closing side restriction, this tissue's too restricted to move into. You gotta open it. So you can do pails and rails in that position. We can have a neck harness on you and load it to length as well, right? You have options. We wouldn't train it in the shortened position like we did where you were looking up at the roof because you couldn't fully contract that. So we have to keep you in that position and load you to length, not short. And again, the main objective of the video was a low level of entry. And like you could sit here and do pails and rails for here, pails and rails from here, pails and rails from here. But to get someone, the average person, to find the passive stretch, hold it, keep everything else still, do the isometric where they're contracting against their hand, and then rail and feel the shortening tissue, that's a lot of steps, right? How do we get the common person to adhere to it? Just do some eccentric loading. Hang your head off your bed in the morning or at night, all the way to the stretch, pull yourself back up, all the way to the stretch, pull yourself back up. Do the same thing in reverse. Have your spouse help you pull your head up. Let her float your boat. You know, you can add additional load if you want to. You can do the lateral flexion and then play around with different zones of that. Right, there's infinite movement options in that regard. Just depends on how you want to do it. You could even put the harness on like a cable and change how the cable's pulling you so you could start training rotation, train lateral flexion. Makes sense?
Lying down.
Yeah, any position you want. Just like any other joint, the position you're putting yourself in is the context that the tissue's being challenged in. But if you're getting closing side restriction, pinching, you're so weak that you couldn't hold that isometric like we found for you on the front side, you gotta start there. You know what I mean? Make sense?
Yeah, awesome.
That was good. I think that was good food for thought for you.
Definitely.